Good morning, guys. How are we doing?
Morning.
Oh, comparing ourselves to Jesus. What's new?
Yeah, yeah. No big deal. Just some casual Easter Monday work conversation. No big deal.
You know
It's
what I
fine.
like to say? When I think about Chelsea and Easter, I like to say she is risen because of all she's been through. That's what I like to say.
I mean, Spring Chelsea is the best Chelsea after
That's
all,
true.
right?
That's true. Exactly.
I'll take
Speak.
all these compliments all day, but yeah, let's get to it. We probably
And say
should.
speaking of the best, we do have the number one seeded Heat in the East, Duncan Robinson. Remember him? Yeah, he scored 27 points off the bench in Game One, as a record, by the way, of eight three
Wow.
pointers apparently by the Heat. So love it or fade it, if Duncan Robinson keeps this up, Jenks, nobody will be able to beat the Heat in the East.
Well, I'm fading this because I don't expect Duncan Robinson to go 9 of 10 from the field in every game in this series. It's an incredible story, and they will need a guy like that to step up. But this is, to me, less about Duncan Robinson and more about the strength of the East. Even if Duncan goes out and shows out every single game, he's not going to shoot at this clip. And you still got the Celtics, Nets, Sixers, Bucks, but Duncan Robinson is going to be the difference. I was not high on the Heat anyway, even though they're clearly the number one seed for a reason. So I'm going to fade it.
I'm going to get it too, and it's not really because of Duncan Robinson. It's looking at the Hawks. They are not great at defending the three ball. We have seen it in the other games. They're just not that great defensively. So I don't think this is something you take away from this series and put it into, hey, when this team is actually playing a good defensive team like the Celtics. It's going to be much tougher to throw up threes and be extremely accurate when you're going against a defense that actually will put a hand in your face. But for the Heat, it doesn't really matter who it is coming off the bench that is pouring in the points, because usually it's Tyler Hero, the sixth man of the year, I believe. I'm not sure if they've handed those awards out yet, but still, it's usually somebody coming off the bench. I will say the Heat are one of the deeper teams in the East, but still, this isn't a takeaway for me. It's more about the Hawks not playing defense, and we knew Duncan Robinson could shoot. Like, we knew that he was a good 3-point shooter, but this isn't really a takeaway for the Heat for me. In fact, there is very little I think I will be taking away from this Hawks Heat series.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one. I find it hard to believe that Duncan Robinson is the X factor in this series. Um, so that's just my personal opinion. And not only that, but the Heat, if they get through this, they're going to have either the Bucks, Sixers, or Celtics, or even the Nets waiting for them. Like, it's it's not so easy just to say they're gonna make it to the finals, no doubt about it. So we'll see. But going on to one of the Heat's main competition, the Philadelphia 76ers. They routed the Raptors in Game One, and the Raptors were huge public. Public loved the Raptors in that game, and
Mm-hmm.
Sixers blew them over. So Tyrese Maxey had a playoff career high of 38 points. James Harden had 14 assists and one turnover. So Chelsea, love it or fade it, Tyrese Maxey was more impressive than James Harden.
I'm going to love that. I do think Tyrese Maxey had the way more impressive performance here, just because looking at James Harden, this is a normal occurrence for him. He puts up double-digit assists on a nightly basis. Also, he's a point guard. This is what he's supposed to be doing. Chris Paul does this as well. Like, yeah, we get it. James Harden is supposed to be dishing dimes. But the thing is, Tyrese Maxey, this is not what we expected from him. We expected him to be a role player on this team, but not the guy stepping up when it wasn't James Harden and Joel Embiid having big nights. This is when you need your role players to be big, but you don't need them to be this big. But I guess you do. So it was an easy win for the Sixers. If Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris can continue being threats when the defense is swarming on the other two superstars, the Sixers are going to have an easy time in this series. Because, like I said, when the defense is keying on the two superstars and Joel Embiid, James Harden, you need your role players to step up. But Tyrese Maxey is making it way easier when he's pouring in 38 points.
Yeah, I'm fading this. James Harden, that's great for him because that's been one of his issues, which is scoring a lot, dishing the ball out a lot, but also turning the ball over. However, there's no way the Sixers could have anticipated that Tyrese Maxey would have gone off like this. And it was awesome to watch him. Just as a basketball fan, he was doing it all. He could not be stopped. Sixers fans were chanting Maxey, Maxey from the stands. He was so incredible. So we've talked about this before, and it happens every single year in the NBA playoffs where stars are generally stars. But what role player will step up on your team and be that guy who has that incredible playoff run that you can rely on? Certainly, we don't know after one game if Maxi's going to be that guy. But if he can do anything like this throughout the playoffs, then the Sixers have someone else that opposing teams have to account for. So I'm fading James Harden. I love the fact that Tyrese Maxey went off. If you're a Sixers backer, to me, that was the most impressive thing about this game.
Has anybody nicknamed him the Maxi Pad yet? I wish he padded his stats.
God, Chelsa.
Wouldn't that be the funniest nickname? Here comes the Maxi Pad.
Something tells me it probably won't catch on. But I had a buddy of mine, and his name was David Maxey, and he was one of my best friends when I was growing up. But in junior high, of course, what did junior high kids do? They started saying that very same thing, and he hated it. And finally, it faded out. You know why? Because then we matured and we became high schoolers. But here we are now, Chelsea. You're bringing it back.
Matt, true or false? We should start calling him the Maxi Pad.
Oh, Chelsea.
I'm gonna go with true, just because I'm a Nets fan and I don't want the Sixers to have any semblance of success. But onto this point, like Tyrese Maxey definitely more impressive than James Harden. How much money is James Harden getting paid per game, per year to do exactly this? This is what he's getting paid to do. So obviously I'm going to take the young guy who scores 38 points in one of his career playoff highs, like not the superstar who's making hundreds of millions of dollars.
Maxi Pad. Gosh.
Chelsea, I can't wait for you to get a letter written from the FCC. And they're like, hey, listen.
Wait, I can't say that?
You can.
Oh.
You can. They're just going to be like, hey, listen, you can say it. You just can't say it 85 times in one show.
Yeah, you're making people uncomfortable.
What? No, me never. I guess we can move on.
Never in a million years. Never. But moving on to something hopefully a little bit more fun for the people out in the West. The Utah Jazz. They won a game, and they handled the Dallas Mavericks pretty handedly in game one. Mavericks had some fight in them, but ultimately without Luka, it's kind of hard for them to really close out a game, especially against a team like Utah. But anyway, Donovan Mitchell scored 32 points. 30 of them were in the second half. So love it or fade it, Jenks, is this the year that Utah can finally get over that hump and maybe make the finals?
Fade it. No, don't buy it at all. Don't buy it. They have that potential, but they're just not talented enough top to bottom. And I would say normally, okay, Utah does have some tools clearly with Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell and a guy like, I always forget that Aaron Gordon doesn't play for the Jazz. He plays for the Nuggets. What am I saying?
Plays for the Nuggets.
Yeah,
Correct.
I don't know where I got confused there, but I don't think they just don't have enough talent to make it. And honestly, if they were on a different side of the bracket, then I would say yes. But if they win this, who do they face? They face the Suns, and there's no way they're going to get past the Suns. So you have to fade this.
Yeah, I'm going to fade it too, and it's because of the Phoenix Suns. It's not really on the Jazz. It's more that, God, the Suns look like the most complete team in the NBA right now. And also, they have the playoff experience. They went to the NBA Finals last year and were very close to putting away that series against the Bucks before. What did they blow? Like a 3-1 series lead? Something like that. But even if you count out the Suns, looking at the Warriors, how impressive did they look against the Nuggets? And Steph Curry didn't even play the whole time. It was the Jordan Poole show. So there are a couple teams in the West that I still have above the Jazz when it comes to the hierarchy of the West. So for me, it's less about the Jazz and more about the other teams that they would have to face.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. There's the East is definitely stronger than the West this year, but there is still some really, really strong competition out West. If the Grizzlies can get past the Wolves, I think if they can survive the Wolves, they're going to be pretty okay. I think it's the first playoff series for a lot of these young players. So if the Grizzlies get past the Wolves, they can be a real threat to even the Suns. And Utah's a team that could lose any game at any given moment. You saw them at the end of the year, blowing 20-point leads, 2 or 3 times in the last week alone. So yeah, I'm going to definitely fade this.
Do we think that the Grizzlies have a chance? On paper, they look like they should be one of the contenders, but I honestly have questions just because they are young and they haven't really been deep in the playoffs yet. Do you think that is a different skill performing at that level in the playoffs. Do you think you really need a veteran presence on a team like that? Because I think usually you have to go in steps. And I see that with the Timberwolves. Even if this is not the year for them, this is such a huge stepping stone for the Timberwolves, getting some of these young guys some playoff experience. So do you think the Grizzlies have a shot, or do you think they're still a year or two away?
I think they're a year or two away. They have all the pieces there, and they're way ahead of schedule. So I think at some point they will be that team to beat. If you're a Memphis fan, you have to be thrilled about where you're headed. But the Suns are a perfect example in that they got all the way to the finals last year. They were that close, and now they were already a veteran laden team. Now they know what it takes to go back and get it done. And I think Memphis needs to learn that lesson as well.
And they also have a battle-tested veteran in Chris Paul leading the charge on the offense.